If you've been looking at the news lately in India, you couldn't have missed two important news events. One was that a group of six people, one of whom jumped into the well of the parliament, the Lok Sabha that is, when it was in session, and blew up a smoke canister. Right, it was a major security breach. And later, when they were arrested, in fact, acts of terrorism were pressed against them. They said that this was an act of protest against the unemployment crisis in the country. The second was that a chartered flight, in fact, of 303 people, most of them Indians, was grounded in Paris, which was headed to Nicaragua, right? And reports say that most of these people wanted to go to Nicaragua and then take the arduous and sort of difficult and dangerous journey further north from there to go towards the southern border of the United States and get into the United States in search of jobs, right? Like, both these should tell us a very important thing. There is a certain unemployment crisis in the country because of which people are sort of taking dangerous and sort of volatile decisions, and it should cause us a lot of concern, right? So if we are to have that national conversation, which we unfortunately are not having, the question to ask is, where do we begin? The place to begin there is, of course, how many people do we sort of enter the workforce every year in this country? How many jobs do we create? And, is there a balance between those two? And it is not as if it is enough to, merely keep up with population growth, because this is a country with a large number of already unemployed people, right? So our job creation should far outpace population growth. Right? Like it's okay for a developed country which is at near or full employment to sort of keep up with population growth. India is a developing country. Its job creation needs to far exceed the population growth in terms of the number of people joining the workforce, right? So if we look at that, India produces about, if you were to look at the data from the Ministry of Human Resource Development, about 12 million college educated people every year, right? Approximately. Now, let's assume that 6 to 8 million of these actually join the workforce, because a significant number of them drop out of the workforce and don't join it for complicated reasons of family, marriage, etc. Right? So if we were to assume that 6 to 8 million those people do join the workforce, right? Remember, there is 4 times as many people who never attended college, according to the government's own data on gross enrollment ratio, right? So if there are 12 million people, there's close to about upwards of 40 million people who never went to college, who also are of their same age cohort, and therefore are getting into the job market, right? So if in that case, if we were to multiply the 6 to 8 million by about 4 times, it's somewhere between let's say 24 to 32 million who join the workforce every year, right? Now, how many jobs in the organized sector is created in the country on an average every year? If you look at the average of the last 5 years, according to data released by the EPFO, it is about 9.5 million. Right? So about 24 to 32 million people join the workforce every year. Forget the fact that there is a vast pool of already unemployed people who are hungry for jobs and they haven't gotten jobs. We are sort of, we make about 1/3 of the actual number of jobs as there are, number of people entering the workforce. But you could rationally argue that, there are a large number of informal jobs that the government doesn't count, right? Let's assume they are 2x the number of jobs that that exist in the organized sector, which the government is easily able to count. So even if you do that, right, that's about by our calculation, if you add the 24 to 32 million who never attended college and the 6 to 8 million who did attend college, the total comes to about 40 million people entering the workforce, right? For these number of people, there are about 9.5 million of organized jobs, sector jobs, and let's say there are about 20 million of jobs in the informal sector. That still counts to about 30 million jobs, right? So there are still about 5 to 10 million people every year that we add to the population who do not have jobs, and this is on top of the existing jobless people, right? So 5 to 10 million people is the size of a small European country, the entire population of a small European country. Over a 5-year period, this is like a size of a mid-sized European country, right? And over a decade, it's probably the size of Spain, for instance, or even bigger, right? So we are staring at a significant, serious threat in terms of the economy's ability to just generate jobs. Otherwise, we are, staring down catastrophe. Because, bear in mind that whenever there has been a large number of unemployed people, well, throughout history, unemployed men, societies have had revolution, like the French Revolution, starting from the French Revolution to the Arab Spring. Like this has been a straight line. If the society is generally filled with, unemployed young men, it just stares at revolution. These events, such as jumping into the well of the parliament, going to Nicaragua to sort of take out a really dangerous journey towards the United States by sort of selling off everything that they had in this country to take that journey, all of this points to a lot of stress. And we should therefore be very worried in terms of what is it that this country is looking at and how is it that we can sort of, alleviate this problem. And it's not as if, it's easy to blame the incumbent government. This is a problem that has been going on for at least 2 decades now. If you look at data, the youth and unemployment, firstly, in the last periodic labor force survey, youth unemployment is 3 times, that is, when we say youth, it is people between the ages 15 to 29, is 3 times that of the general population, right? Like, park that aside. But if you measure that over time, from 1999 to 2018, the youth unemployment rate has tripled. Right? And this is a significant problem. So when we say that there is an existing pool of jobless people who sort of worsen the situation of those who become jobless every year, this is what we mean. There's a large pool of unemployed people already in the system, and their unemployment rates have tripled. And then we have, for every additional year, we have newly unemployed people, which just creates a vast pool of unemployed people in this country, which is frankly worrying. Which is why, you could argue that one way to deal with that is by reforms, economic reforms of some kind, which generates more jobs. Sure, right? But what we should also bear in mind is that takes time. And while it takes time, governments probably ought to sort of have some welfare schemes to sort of alleviate and make sure that these people don't get restless. And those schemes are generally termed under what are called welfare schemes. Jobs like, for people like you and me who probably already have jobs and are comfortable, our job then is to not deride these government programs as freebies and instead probably say, okay, that is probably required and essential so that we don't end up with a revolution, right? So